So the Jaguars have officially concluded the biggest and most eventful offseason in franchise history. Now, you could say this video is a little bit premature because the Jaguars held 10 OTA practices and there should be a mandatory minicamp next week, but Doug Pederson did cancel it. So next week, he pretty much announced that, look, he's given all of the vets off except for select veterans. Players that will be reporting are like injured players who are still rehabbing. So I imagine like James Robinson, Jamal Agnew, even Rayshon Jenkins, maybe even ETN. Those guys will be back. Other players that they're going to have in-house are rookies. They're going to be here next week for the 3-day minicamp, as well as like selected veterans. So I imagine with this is like the Jaguars put in a lot of work during OTAs, and the Jaguars also had pretty much 100% attendance. So it's pretty, I guess they feel like it's pretty right just to say, okay, let's give these guys an extra week in this offseason to do whatever they need to do to get right before training camp. You know, the approach might be a little bit different if you're a team like, say, like the Rams or something. Like the Rams, you know, maybe in the Rams mini OTAs they didn't have like superstars like Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, like Cooper Kupp. I don't know who reported over there and who didn't. I'm just using that as an example. And maybe they're a team that might say, look, mandatory minicamp, this is the first time we really get our whole group together and we can really talk to them. But the Jaguars are different with like everybody reporting. You know, they can pretty much say like, okay, you know, we know the status of everybody. Let's just, instead of having like 90 guys here next week, let's just take like 20 to 25 guys. You know, we're not going to do too much, actually probably any teamwork. We're more so just going to work with them one-on-one, get them some more specialized kind of attention from the coaching staff and kind of run it from there. So, you know, it's cool that Doug Pederson is giving them this time off, and it's good that the Jaguars seem like they had a pretty good OTA session. Now, I guess one thing I do want to make a note of is that during OTAs, I didn't have this report yesterday, but today I can say that it looks like Jordan Smith, the outside linebacker drafted out of UAB in the 4th round of the 2021 NFL draft, he did have a knee injury that's going to require surgery, and he will be out the entire 2022 season. Now, this player, it's not necessarily a huge blow because when we were talking about, you know, guys, when you're running through the list of guys that need to make impacts, you know, he was almost a wild card. We weren't really banking on Jordan Smith. Okay, this guy needs to get 4, 5, 6 sacks. He wasn't really in the equation a lot, but at the same time, it stinks to lose him. You know, it would be better to have him than not have him, but it's not, you know, we could have suffered a lot worse blows, I guess I should say. But it's unfortunate, it's tragic, but, you know, he'll be out, and hopefully the Jaguars don't suffer more injuries like before week 1 of the NFL season. Some guys will get nicked up here and there. Let's just hope that we don't have another ETN situation where a guy gets, you know, injured and doesn't play at all in the regular season. Now to kind of move on to the next step. Now we can talk about just how this offseason, in my opinion, was like the biggest in franchise history. Now, we can go back to when the season concluded in January. I think Jaguar fans were almost at their like tipping point. Like, I'd never seen Jaguar fans more fed up with the Jacksonville organization than they were in January after they decided that, look, Trent Baalke isn't going anywhere. He's going to help with the head coaching search. He's going to be the GM. He's not going anywhere. And, man, like, Jaguar fans were not happy with this, mainly not necessarily because he's not very good at like acquiring talent, but what everybody was saying from national media to just different guys running NFL, like the consensus was that the Jaguars would not be able to bring in a good head coach with Trent Baalke in the building. And even through the like January into February, like from the outside looking in, it was a disastrous head coaching search. It just felt that way. Of course, that's just what us fans perceived, just because the Jaguars had their list of guys that they interviewed. They interviewed all of them. Then they went through and randomly started interviewing other guys that weren't even on their initial list. Then they started going back and interviewing, guys that they originally already interviewed. So we were like, what in the heck is going on? Like, we went from like seeming like we were wrapped up with Byron Leftwich to moving on and like almost looking like Bill O'Brien or like Rich Bisaccia was going to be head coach. And we were like, what in the hell is going on? Like, what is Shad Khan doing? What is going on with this organization? Like me, I was hanging on by a string, and that string on the other hand was Trevor Lawrence saying, "Look, you have me. We'll be good. Just trust the I mean, like literally, that was me. Like if the Jaguars did not have Trevor Lawrence, I don't know how I could have remained optimistic or positive about any way this franchise is going directionally. But the Jaguars took us by surprise. And on February 2nd, I believe it was, the Jaguars announced in the late evening that Doug Pederson has been hired to be the Jaguars head coach. And this was awesome. I mean, this was a home run hire. This was a guy that was number one on my list when we fired Urban Meyer in December. Just because, look, Doug Pederson, he was a perfect fit. I mean, former quarterback, could work with Trevor Lawrence. He was a guy that has been around kind of bad culture. I don't know necessarily bad culture, but I should say front office dysfunction where, he has been on the bad end of an owner, GM, head coach triangle where he was kind of the odd man out. So he knows he's dealt with a dysfunction, and he's been a part of a good culture with the Eagles. He was constantly going to the playoffs, winning games. But most importantly, the man won a Super Bowl. Like, you don't find Super Bowl head coaches just walking around the streets. You just don't. And that's what Doug Pederson brings to us, is a Super Bowl champion. What we aspire to be, he's going to bring to our team. So, man, it's going to be exciting. I mean, it really will. And this is a home run hire. And then from that point on, things started getting more positive because we thought that instead of Doug Pederson, because of Balky, we're going to end up with Bill O'Brien. But boom, it worked out. So we're in a good place there. So that's what happens in February. Of course, he quickly assembles a coaching staff. It was a lot quicker than Urban Meyer just because Doug Pederson had his guys. I mean, he pretty much knew what his coaching staff was going to look like, hired the offensive coordinator quickly, defense coordinator quickly. He kind of collabed with those guys and hiring different position coaches. And, the coaching staff that he assembled seems to be pretty good. Of course, time will tell, but it seems to be pretty good on paper. At least we know that the head coach and the whole coaching staff is a lot better than what we had just 1 year ago. So then March comes around, and this is, we can debate about, the title of this video, biggest offseason in franchise history. We can debate a lot of that stuff, but this was the biggest free agency in franchise history. This was the biggest free agency in NFL history. The Jaguars dished out $175 million of guaranteed money. That was an NFL record, beating the Patriots from 1 year ago. I mean, they were getting players all over the place at every level. We were just upgrading here, upgrading here, upgrading here. It was tremendous what the Jaguars were able to do. Of course, time will tell if that will work out. But at the end of the day, dishing out that money, it ensures that, look, the Jaguars got a lot of good players. We'll see if those players can fit into Jacksonville well. Of course, a lot of that is overpaying players. Of course, I mean, we're the Jaguars. We haven't been a historically good team. I mean, the past 10 years, we've had one winning season, and everything's just been really bad. So, of course, we're going to have to overpay players until we actually become a good team. But we paid the price. We got them in here, and, we weren't getting, like, outbid anywhere. So, that was that. And then April rolled around, and we were able to have the number one overall pick. So the Jaguars picked the best player on their board. Like, the Jaguars were able to approach this draft and say, okay, who is the best player in this NFL draft? That's the guy we're going to get. So that turned out to be Travon Walker. The night was not over. Later that Thursday night, the Jaguars traded up from 33 to 27 and brought in Devin Lloyd, another guy who's most likely going to be a day one impact starter. So, like, boom. And of course, we sprinkled in guys like Luke Fortner and Chad Muma. So, 2 first-round picks day one of the NFL draft, number one pick. So, got better there. And then finally in May, we're able to kind of look at our team, and it looks like honestly, one of the most exciting things, probably second or third most exciting thing for me this offseason, was just knowing that once I got the news that Travis Etienne is fully clear to play, because a lot of times I'm kind of holding back on like being able to project this guy and what he's going to be able to do, but he's out there, he's running, he looks good, and like that is huge. I mean, that is probably the most intriguing player for me for the Jaguars in 2022, minus this guy, Trevor Lawrence, of course, but he's the most intriguing guy like every year. But Travis Etienne, I mean, Jaguars drafted him in 2022, not because like, oh, we need to get a running back, let's go get him. It was mostly because the Jaguars needed the most explosive player that was on their board, whether that was wide receiver, tight end, running back. The Jaguars wanted playmaking ability on offense. That was a big need, playmaking ability, and that's what Etienne gives us. He's not just okay, let's line up in a 21 personnel and just hand the ball up between the guard and tackle to Etienne. Like, he's going to be, running wheel routes. He'll be lining up at wide receiver. He's going to be motioning. Like, the Jaguars, that is going to be the Jaguars' chess piece, is Etienne. And I'm so excited to see what kind of role Doug Pederson and the crew carves out for him. That's really exciting for me. And also Jamal Agnew is looking good running around there after he had like a pretty bad injury. That hip injury, that's a replay I never want to watch again. That was gross, and I can't imagine. And, we saw Josh Lambo not being able to come back from a hip injury well, but Jamal Agnew's out there running around like he's looking pretty good after his hip injury. So I'm excited about having him back. And also James Robinson running good on a straight line basis. Of course, he tore his Achilles late in the season. I believe it was like December or something. It was late in the season. It was unfortunate, but he seems to be on track, and I don't know. I mean, of course, Cam Akers came back good, but we'll see what happens with James Robinson, because, that was an interesting situation there. So when you look at the team, man, the Jaguars, it looks like on offense, the Jaguars will probably have anywhere between 5 to 7 brand new starters on offense. And on defense, about the same thing, about 5 to 7 brand new starters. So the Jaguars are essentially turning over 50% of their roster on the starting end and pretty much upgrading at all those spots. The only guy you can maybe debate that we got worse at was maybe like losing DJ Chark, if you're like a DJ Chark stan. But other than that, I mean, we upgraded all those positions. So, man, it's going to be a different looking team, from a personnel standpoint, from just having like good players on the roster. We're going to be monumentally better at coaching. I mean, it's funny even mentioning, the Jaguars will be better at coaching. It's like, we're going to be so much better. The leadership is going to be so much better. The distractions will be minimized. And, even Doug Pederson, I was listening to him at the Trevor Lawrence thing, whatever. I don't even know what they were doing, some kind of like fan event. But he's like basically saying, yeah, like the biggest thing is you have to eliminate distractions. Like, I'm telling players, like, kind of limit the amount of people that you talk to. Try to like get off social media. Try not to like fill your life with like unnecessary stresses. Like, okay, who do I have to get tickets for? Just like minimize all those different distractions and focus on football. Last year, we had Trevor Lawrence coming to the podium answering about, oh yeah, like Urban, I know he was at a bar and everything, but like, it's fine, we're behind him. And then, he was like, oh, like, James Robinson, why is he not in the game? Put him in the, he's answering, like, we're asking like a 21-year-old dude to come in here and answer for the ridiculousness of his coaching staff. That was not, that's embarrassing, man. Like, the more I look back on it, the more I'm like, what the hell was going on last year? But that happened. So we move on. The coaching is better. Like, just, of course, the roster is going to be better. Our quarterback is going into his second year. So obviously quarterbacks can become a lot better from year one to year two. And I'm not at all concerned about Trevor Lawrence and whether he can make that year two leap. I think he'll be a lot better. I think turnovers will be minimized. I think the touchdowns will be up, and I think he'll improve on like all aspects, because last year it was so sad to watch because in like September he was like looking good, he was making a bunch of good throws, you know, early October he was doing well, and then like he started regressing a lot. And that's when a quarterback like that is regressing like that, like the coaching staff needs to do something. And we know what was going on with the Jags coaching staff. It just wasn't a good situation for players to get better, to develop players, and that should not be the case. And I do not think that will be the case this year for the Jaguars. So, in my opinion, biggest offseason in franchise history. I mean, I laid it out, man. Just all the money we spent, getting a Super Bowl winning head coach in here, just the draft picks, getting the number one player on your board. Just the Jaguars did a lot of good this offseason, from, everybody being absolutely fed up with the team in January to looking back and saying, it looks like we did all right. So the offseason is pretty much here. Not a lot of news going to be over the next course of the month. Like, the only news is usually bad news. Like, we don't want to see players get in trouble or, some of the ridiculous stuff that we've seen in the past. We hope to stay clear of that. And, the NFL football season's almost here. It's exciting. It felt like a short off season, maybe because it was so eventful, or maybe just because I'm getting older. As you get older, why is life going by so much quicker now? I'm 28 years old. I'll be 29 soon. The next thing I know, I'm going to be in my 40s. So I'll just, I'm not going to rush my way to football season. I'm just going to kind of sit back and enjoy the ride that we call life. So with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, drop a like for me. It really helps me out in the channel. And, let's do some big things in 2022. I'm really excited for it. Thank you for watching. Go Jags. You guys watched the whole video. Really appreciate that. You guys can subscribe to the channel for the best source of Jaguars news on the YouTube platform. Also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at UCF_Jaguar. And you can become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month for exclusive channel content. Thank you guys, and go Jags.